Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show where democracy comes to die, laughing and billionaires come to explain why paying taxes is for suckers. I'm your host, and tonight we have a story so explosive, so magnificently chaotic, that I genuinely considered calling in sick, just so I could watch it unfold from my couch with a bucket of popcorn and the number for my cardiologist on speed dial. You know how every few months something happens in American politics that makes you think, well, that's it. That's the craziest thing that could possibly happen. The simulation has officially run out of ideas. And then the very next day, the universe looks at your naive optimism and says, hold my beer, you sweet summer child. Tonight's story is one of those moments, except instead of holding a beer, the universe is holding a stack of tax documents. And instead of saying, hold my beer, Samuel L. Jackson is saying something far more colorful that we legally cannot repeat on this broadcast without the FCC sending a SWAT team to our studio. So, here's what happened. Samuel L. Jackson. Yes, that's Samuel L. Jackson, the man who has played approximately 47,000 characters across every genre of film ever conceived. The man whose voice alone could narrate a phone book and make it sound like the most important document in human history. The man who turned a simple phrase about snakes and planes into a cultural phenomenon. That Samuel L. Jackson went on live television last night and did something that has sent the entire Republican Party into what I can only describe as a collective existential meltdown. He dropped Donald Trump's hidden tax returns on live TV during prime time, while approximately 37 million Americans watched in real time, their jaws collectively hitting the floor with such force that seismologists in California briefly thought they were experiencing a minor earthquake. And folks, I have to tell you, as someone who has been doing this job for longer than I care to admit, as someone who has watched political scandals come and go like seasons, as someone who genuinely thought nothing could surprise me anymore, I was not prepared. I was not emotionally, psychologically, or spiritually prepared for what unfolded on my television screen last night. But before we dive into the absolute nuclear meltdown that followed, before we examine the wreckage and count the political bodies, before we watch grown adults on cable news try to explain how tax evasion is actually a sign of patriotism, let's set the stage. Now, before we continue, I need to take a moment to address our viewers across this beautiful, chaotic, deeply confused nation of ours. Whether you're watching from the sun-baked suburbs of Phoenix, where the heat is almost as intense as the political drama we're about to discuss, or from the frozen tundra of Minnesota, where you've been snowed in for 3 months, and this is literally your only entertainment, or from the perpetually bewildered state of Florida, where alligators and political scandals compete for newspaper headlines. Wherever you are, I need you to do something. I need you to sit down. If you're already sitting, I need you to sit down harder. If you're driving, pull over immediately because what I'm about to tell you may cause involuntary laughter, spontaneous applause, or the sudden urge to call everyone you've ever met to ask if they're seeing what you're seeing. And to our viewers in New York City, specifically those of you in Manhattan who may or may not have had business dealings with a certain former president, you might want to make sure your lawyers are on standby. Just saying, not legal advice, but definitely a suggestion to our viewers in Mar-a-Lago adjacent properties. I hope you have good soundproofing, because the screaming that erupted from that estate last night was reportedly audible from 3 zip codes away. And to our viewers in Hollywood, I want you to know that Samuel L. Jackson just gave a performance that deserves every award that has ever been invented, plus a few new ones that we'll have to create specifically for the occasion. The Academy should just mail him an Oscar preemptively at this point. Now, to understand the full magnificence of what happened last night, we need to go back a bit. We need to understand the context, the history, the decades-long saga of Donald Trump and his tax returns. A love story between a man and his accountants, a tale of creative mathematics that would make Einstein weep with confusion. A financial narrative so convoluted that forensic accountants have reportedly developed drinking problems trying to untangle it. For years, literally years, spanning multiple election cycles, countless news cycles, and approximately 400,000 tweets, Donald Trump has treated his tax returns like they were the nuclear codes, like they were the location of the Holy Grail, like they contained photographs of him being nice to someone, which apparently would be more damaging to his brand than any financial irregularity. Every other presidential candidate in modern history has released their tax returns. It's tradition. It's expected. It's literally the bare minimum of financial transparency that we ask of people who want to control the most powerful nation on earth. And yet Donald Trump looked at this tradition, laughed in its face, and said, "I'm under audit." For approximately 7 years, the "I'm under audit" excuse became so familiar, so reflexive that I'm pretty sure Trump's lawyers had it on a button they could press whenever anyone asked about his finances. Reporter: "Mr. Trump, can you release your tax returns?" Lawyer presses button: "He's under audit." But the IRS says being under audit doesn't prevent it. Lawyer presses button harder: "Under audit." The mystery of Trump's tax returns became its own cottage industry. Journalists spent careers trying to get a glimpse. Accountants developed conspiracy theories. The New York Times eventually got their hands on some documents and wrote a story so long and detailed that it required its own table of contents. They revealed that Trump had paid $750 in federal income taxes one year, which, as many people pointed out, is less than what a public school teacher pays, less than what a barista at Starbucks pays, less than what basically anyone who has ever received a paycheck pays. $750. That's like 2 really nice dinners in Manhattan. That's like 1 month of parking in downtown Chicago. That's like 3 weeks of avocado toast, which, according to some economists, is apparently why millennials can't afford houses. Donald Trump, self-proclaimed billionaire, paid less in federal income taxes than the average American spends on streaming services in a year. But still, the full picture remained elusive. The complete returns, the detailed line items, the comprehensive financial portrait of a man who claimed to be worth $10 billion while simultaneously claiming losses so massive that he paid almost nothing in taxes, remained hidden until last night. Enter Samuel L. Jackson. Now, Samuel L. Jackson was supposed to be on television last night to promote his latest film. That's it. A standard promotional appearance. Talk about the movie, share some funny anecdotes from set, maybe do a dramatic reading of something, plug the release date, go home. Standard Hollywood stuff. The interview started normally enough. The host asked about the film. Jackson talked about working with his co-stars. He mentioned a particularly challenging action sequence. He made a joke about his age and how many movies he's made at this point. Everyone laughed. It was pleasant. It was professional. It was exactly what you'd expect. And then, approximately 12 minutes into the interview, something shifted. You could see it in Jackson's eyes. That look he gets right before his character in a movie is about to do something that changes everything. That Samuel L. Jackson look that has preceded some of the most memorable moments in cinema history. The host asked the innocuous question about whether Jackson had any thoughts on the current political climate. Just a throwaway question, the kind of soft political query that celebrities usually navigate with vague platitudes about unity and hope and the importance of voting. Jackson paused, and in that pause, you could feel something coming. The studio audience went quiet. The host leaned in. The control room probably started sweating. "You know what?" Jackson said, his voice taking on that particular cadence that has made him one of the most quoted actors in Hollywood history. "I've been thinking about this for a while, and I've been holding on to something that I think the American people deserve to see." And then he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a manila envelope. "I want you to imagine, if you can, the collective intake of breath that occurred across America in that moment. 37 million people simultaneously thinking, what is in that envelope? Network executives probably spilling their coffee, lawyers reaching for their phones, and somewhere in Florida, a certain former president reportedly stopping mid-bite of what I can only assume was an overcooked steak with ketchup. Inside this envelope," Jackson continued, holding it up so the cameras could get a good shot, "are documents that certain people have spent a lot of time, money, and legal resources trying to keep hidden from the American public. And I've been sitting on them for about 3 weeks trying to figure out the right moment to share them." The host, to their credit, managed to maintain some semblance of professional composure, though you could see the panic in their eyes. This was not in the rundown. This was not in the pre-in. This was not anything anyone had prepared for. "Mr. Jackson," the host said, probably silently praying to every deity known to humanity, "what exactly is in that envelope?" Jackson smiled. That smile, the one that appears right before everything goes sideways in every movie he's ever been in. "These," he said, opening the envelope with the deliberate slowness of a man who knows he's about to make history, "are Donald J. Trump's complete tax returns from 2015 to 2000. All of them, every page, every line item, every creative deduction, every suspicious write-off, every payment that went places it probably shouldn't have gone." And then he started reading. Now, I need to pause here to explain something about live television. When something unexpected happens, there's usually a delay. Usually, Someone in the control room can hit a button. Usually, there's some mechanism to prevent things from going completely off the rails. But this was Samuel L. Jackson, a man who has been in the entertainment industry for approximately 500 years, a man who knows exactly how live television works, a man who had clearly, carefully, deliberately planned this moment. He started reading numbers, and those numbers were devastating. Let's start with 2017, Jackson said, pulling out the first page with the flair of a magician, revealing his final trick. Total income reported, negative $47 million. That's right, negative. The man claimed to be worth billions while telling the IRS he lost $47 million in 1 year while living in a gold-plated penthouse, flying in a private jet with his name on it in letters visible from space. The camera cut to the audience. People's mouths were literally hanging open. One woman appeared to be crying, though whether from laughter or existential despair was unclear. Federal income tax paid in 2017, Jackson continued. 700 deductions. Oh, the deductions. Hairstyling and maintenance, $70,000 per year. That's right, $70,000 for that hair. Whatever is happening on top of his head apparently requires more financial investment than most Americans' annual salary. Jackson paused to let that sink in. $70,000 for hair. I've been bold by choice for decades, and suddenly I'm feeling very financially responsible about that decision. The audience erupted in laughter. The host had given up any pretense of control and was just sitting there watching history unfold like the rest of us. But wait, Jackson said, employing the vocal cadence of an infomercial host about to offer a second set of knives for free. There's more. Makeup consultation, $43,000. Tanning services, $112,000. I'm sorry, did I read that right? $112,000 on tanning. This man paid more money to look like a rotting tangerine than most people pay for their children's education. Jackson kept going. The man was relentless. He was reading these tax returns like they were a script for the greatest courtroom drama ever written, and he was playing both the prosecutor and the judge. Now, let's talk about business expenses, he said, pulling out another page, because this is where the creativity really shines. Golf cart rental at Trump properties listed as a business expense. Every golf cart at every property for every round. Over $3 million in golf cart rentals over 5 years. All written off as business expenses. He looked directly into the camera. Now, I'm no accountant. I played a lot of characters, but I don't think I've ever played an accountant. But even I know that your own golf carts at your own golf courses that you own being rented to yourself and called a business expense is what's the technical term. Absolute horseshit. The FCC was probably having a collective aneurysm at this point, but Jackson continued undeterred. He shifted into legal fees, consulting fees, and finally, what was possibly the most eyebrow-raising revelation, charitable donations. As Jackson continued breaking down the deductions in creative accounting, you couldn't help but marvel at the sheer audacity. The revelations kept coming. Millions in foreign payments, the abuse of tax loopholes, even potential criminal activity, including money laundering. And all along, Jackson made one thing clear. This wasn't just tax evasion. This was a performance. And the performance was over. As Jackson continued to rip through Trump's tax returns, the audience remained stunned, hanging on every word. The more he revealed, the more absurd the situation became. But Jackson wasn't just exposing creative accounting. He was dismantling the very performance Trump had built around his identity. With every deduction, with every shady write-off, the mask was coming off. Jackson delved into more of Trump's deductions. There were business expenses that defied belief. Over $3 million spent on golf cart rentals. Jackson noted how absurd it was that Trump rented his own golf carts at Trump properties and wrote them off as business expenses. This is not a business expense, Jackson quipped. This is self-dealing at its finest. Jackson was just getting started. He pulled out a page, listing legal fees to suppress information, over $2.3 million for legal strategies designed to hide financial details. The amount itself wasn't what shocked the audience. It was the sheer audacity of someone using their own legal fees to maintain a facade of legitimacy. Jackson pointed out the fundamental flaws in Trump's methods that had worked for years, but were now laid bare for everyone to see. The man wasn't done. Now, let's talk about foreign payments, Jackson continued, his voice taking on an edge of righteous fury. Over the years, Trump's organization received over $200 million from foreign entities. He rattled off names of foreign governments and individuals associated with shady dealings. Russian oligarchs, Saudi Arabian government officials, Chinese state-owned enterprises, Jackson listed. And most disturbingly, these payments came in the middle of his presidential campaign. The audience, still recovering from the tax revelations, was now leaning in, almost in disbelief. Jackson wasn't just exposing Trump's personal tax evasion. He was connecting the dots to foreign influence and financial corruption. Jackson let the weight of the moment settle in. Now, I'm not saying these payments are illegal, he continued, but a presidential candidate receiving millions of dollars from foreign governments while refusing to release his tax returns. Well, you can see why he didn't want us to see these documents. The host, still trying to maintain composure, managed to ask, "How did you get these documents, Mr. Jackson?" Jackson's response was equal parts casual and devastating. "I've had them verified by 3 forensic accounting firms, Deloitte, Ernst & Young, and KPMG. These are the real deal." He then casually added, "I've already sent copies to the House Ways and Means Committee, the Senate Finance Committee, the FBI, and the IRS. These documents are out there now, and there's no going back." The magnitude of what Jackson was revealing had the power to reshape the political landscape. By the end of his broadcast, the room felt smaller, the stakes higher, and the revelations about Trump's financial dealings seemed like they were just the tip of the iceberg. The news cycle exploded the moment Jackson walked off that stage. The next morning, the story was everywhere. Journalists, legal experts, and accountants all poured over the documents, confirming everything Jackson had revealed. What followed was an immediate attempt at damage control from Trump's camp, but it quickly spiraled into a comedic display of deflections and contradictions. Trump posted on Truth Social about Jackson, calling him a washed-up actor whose movies haven't been good since Pulp Fiction. He also claimed Jackson was spreading fake documents. But here's the thing. While Trump railed against Jackson, he didn't actually deny the authenticity of the tax returns. Instead, he called them fake, and the internet immediately latched onto that. The phrase, "My taxes are perfect," became a meme, as people couldn't help but laugh at how out of touch the former president sounded. The following day, Trump held a press conference. It was an absolute disaster. Trump, apparently caught off guard by the severity of the revelations, tried to explain himself. "Every smart businessman uses the tax code," he said, his voice rising with defensiveness. "If you're not using every deduction, every loophole, you're not doing it right." This was a huge misstep. Journalists immediately pounced on his admission, and before long, Trump's words were being dissected and shared widely. The contradiction was glaring. Trump had just admitted in public that the deductions he used to lower his taxes were indeed legitimate, despite calling the documents fake. But it wasn't just about tax avoidance anymore. It was the broader issue of foreign payments and possible corruption. These payments from foreign governments were never about business, Jackson had argued. They were about power, influence, and leveraging financial ties for personal gain. Trump's press conference only compounded his problems. The media quickly picked up on his incoherence. At one point, Trump suggested that Jackson probably made up the documents with AI, a bizarre and unfounded accusation. Meanwhile, in the background, his staff was scrambling. Phones were buzzing. Some aides appeared to be texting furiously, probably trying to distance themselves from the chaos. The internet, ever quick to respond, erupted with more memes. The term "under audit" became a popular punchline. It became shorthand for any politician or public figure offering a flimsy excuse, and the hashtag "under audit" trended worldwide. As the political fallout continued, global media outlets jumped in with their own analyses. Trump's foreign ties, specifically the payments from Russian oligarchs, Saudi officials, and Chinese entities, raised serious questions about the extent of his financial dealings while in office. Could these payments have influenced Trump's policies, decisions, and the overall direction of American foreign relations? That was the big question that political analysts were now grappling with. In a way, Samuel L. Jackson had unwittingly forced the conversation out into the open. His revelations weren't just about taxes. They were about the kind of man Trump was behind the public persona. A man with debts, foreign connections, and a web of financial dealings so complex that even seasoned accountants had trouble keeping track of it all. Part 7. Jackson's Final Challenge.
In the aftermath, Samuel L. Jackson became a hero in the eyes of many Americans, the man who took down a president with nothing but a stack of documents and a steady hand. Yet Jackson's final words to the media, when asked about his thoughts on the situation, summed up his approach to the entire ordeal. "I've played villains and heroes for years," Jackson said in a follow-up interview. "But this is real life."
And we're all seeing what happens when a man lies to the American people for decades. What are we going to do about it? That's the real question. He then issued a challenge directly to Trump: release your tax returns. Let's see them all. The real ones, not the doctored ones. Let the American people see for themselves. And Jackson's challenge wasn't just a rhetorical question. It was a rallying cry for accountability. "You spent your whole career pretending to be something you're not," Jackson said. "But the performance is over. The lights are on. The audience can see the wires." With those words, Samuel L. Jackson laid down the gauntlet. Now it was up to the rest of America to decide how to respond to the revelations, how to ensure accountability, and how to make sure that in the end, truth would prevail.